I'm not an attorney or giving any legal advice. I suggest you talk to an attorney before you do anything related to real estate law or asset protection. The reason why you would want to set up an LLC is primarily for taxes and asset protection. If you do it wrong though, and make stupid mistakes, the LLC can become worthless. No! A corporate veil is there to protect you by separating the assets from the individual in case of a lawsuit. But it can be punctured. You can potentially put your LLC at risk and be a target when you get sued, or vice versa, your LLC can get sued and then you could be the target. Don't do these stupid things and lose everything that you've worked for. So, when is the right time and when is the wrong time to set up an LLC for your rental properties? Well, in this video, we're gonna go over all the most common, stupid, dumb mistakes that new investors make after they buy their rental properties. If you already own rental properties and have not set up an LLC yet, stick around until the end of this video and I'll show you what potentially your next steps are. First, let's talk about when you should never set up an LLC. The main reason is because doing so can cause significant delays if you plan on refinancing, which can end up costing you a lot of money. It's going to require that you plan ahead, so listen up. You've just purchased your rental property, interest rate right now is a little bit high, and you're thinking you might want to refinance in the next 6 months. If you take the property and put it into an LLC, the owner of the property is the LLC. It's no longer your property. So the ability to refinance the loan is now made more difficult. Many lenders will tell you that if you want to refinance that rental property, you're going to need to take that property out of the LLC into your own name before you can refinance. After you refinance, you're going to have to go ahead and put it back into the LLC. This is going to cost you more money because you're going to need to hire an attorney to help you do that. Okay, so that doesn't sound too bad, right? Well, did you know that many lenders will ask you to do something called seasoning your property? No, it's not the 11 herbs and spices that makes KFC chicken taste so good. Seasoning a property means that what you need to do is hold that property in your own name for a period of time. Most often, that's about 6 months or longer. Are you seeing the problem? So instead of being able to refinance immediately, you actually need to hold that property now for another 6 months. Why would you need to refinance? There are many reasons why someone might consider refinancing their rental properties. First, there could be a chance of getting a lower interest rate. And second, you might need to pull some cash out of that property in order to purchase another property and thus build your portfolio. Now let's discuss some common mistakes made all the time by people when they invest in real estate. Chances are, you're not a highly qualified real estate attorney. Help me understand the thought behind this. When somebody would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars buying a real estate property, only to then download an LLC operating agreement on the internet for a few $100 in order to save some money. When you randomly download and use an operating agreement you don't understand, you're taking on risks of not knowing what's in that operating agreement that could potentially harm you, or even worse, you don't know what's missing in the operating agreement that could potentially protect you. Don't be that person who always tries to take the cheapest route. Ask yourself this question: how would you feel if you bought a rental property for $800,000, used an operating agreement that you downloaded from the internet that only cost you $200,000? You set up the LLC yourself and then you get sued by someone. Maybe you get into a car accident. Maybe you did a business deal that went wrong. Now the plaintiff finds that you have this rental property in your LLC and your operating agreement doesn't hold up in court. The judge orders you to sell your assets and your rental property in order to pay this damage. And all this could have been avoided if you just didn't cheap out on the LLC agreement. So as a real estate broker here in San Diego, when I represent a client like a buyer who's looking to purchase properties on their own, California actually doesn't require me to hire an attorney on my client's behalf. California actually allows real estate agents to do all the legal paperwork, all the disclosures during the sales process. But since I'm not an attorney, I provide my buyers and my clients with the legal advice and representation, and I pay the attorney's fees at no additional cost to my buyers when I'm representing them. This basically protects my clients because the attorney is going to be more aware of what potential issues could arise and protect my clients so that they don't become victims. When you set up your LLC, you're going to need to choose between manager managed and member managed. And I know that's a mouthful, but basically the difference between the two is that a manager managed LLC, you can announce yourself as the manager. And as a result, you can make the decisions for that LLC. However, if let's say you set it up as a member managed, you're going to need the members of that LLC approval in order to get anything done. So let's say you give a percentage of the LLC to your kids. Now you want to refinance the property or you possibly want to sell the asset. Pretend that you set up their LLC as a member managed LLC. And let's say that you give a percentage of your LLC to your kids. Now, you decide that you want to refinance or possibly sell these rental properties. You need to get permission from all the members. This way, you lose control of your company. And if you set it up as a manager managed LLC, and you name yourself the manager, you can basically take complete control of all the decisions of the company. And the members basically just own the company, but they're kind of like silent partners and they don't really have any decision-making authority. So if you give shares away to your children, you can still maintain control of your own company. And I've heard countless people making this mistake. And what happens is when they need to make a decision, they need to get the buy-in of all the members. And this can cause delays and problems, especially when the members disagree. Consider not setting up your LLC with forced distribution. If you get sued and there's a judgment against you, the creditor can then use it to get distributions that your company pays to you. If you don't do this, what will happen is you avoid having to pay yourself, and then this makes it harder for your creditors to take the assets from your LLC. This next part is going to sound very legalese. When you're setting up your LLC, consider setting it up as a non-prorata distribution. It basically means that if you set up your LLC with multiple members, multiple owners, the company doesn't have to pay an equal amount of distribution to each of the members. So let's take that example that we used earlier about giving membership to the 2 kids. So let's say you own this property and you make 2 of your kids members of the LLC. And then you now have a judgment against you. If the LLC is set up as a non-prorata distribution, you can then pay the partners and not pay yourself. This way, the creditors can't go after the money. However, if you unknowingly set up that company as a pro rata distribution, the operating agreement can force you to pay all the members the same amount of money when you distribute your funds from that company. So your share of the distribution will now be subject to that judgment against you, and then your creditors can then come after that money. Another thing to look at when you're setting up your LLC is to put restrictions on the transfer. Your operating agreement can restrict who can become members of that LLC. There are really 2 benefits when you set up your LLC agreement. If you put a restriction of LLC membership, and let's say you happen to get a judgment against you, this can block potential creditors from taking interest in your LLC because they can't become a member of your LLC. The second reason is if, let's say, you put a restriction on your LLC and you have other partners or members in that LLC and they decide to sell or transfer their ownership and their share to another person, you might end up being in business with somebody that you have no clue who they are and you don't know anything about them. This could potentially cause issues for you. So other members can't sell their share of the LLC without your permission. One final thing I want to bring up to you when you're using your LLC and you're setting up the corporation, and this is really important and a lot of people make this mistake, is don't commingle your funds. And what I mean by that is don't use your LLC's money for personal items or vice versa. Because what happens is if you start commingling your funds and taking your LLC corporation's money and using it as a private personal money to buy stupid things, if you get sued, now the attorney can make the argument that that LLC is not in itself a separate entity, and it will pierce the corporate veil. And then what happens is that lawyer can go after all the assets in that LLC. So do not commingle funds. During my research, these are just a few of the things that I looked up and brought to your attention. But realistically, there are so many more things that I haven't even been able to touch in this video. When you're setting up your LLC, I really strongly recommend that you don't do it yourself. Hire a qualified attorney who has experience in setting up corporations and LLCs to help you, because their advice is going to be really, really critical in order to protect you and put you in the best situation so that in the event that something goes wrong and you get sued, you're not going to be the one that has your LLC properties taken away from you. The key here is really to make sure that you do everything correctly so that you don't leave yourself vulnerable in case somebody happens to sue you. You're better off protecting yourself and just making sure that you're insulated from all potential lawsuits. This is why rich people have an army of lawyers behind them and poor people have an army of lawyers in front of them. If you already own rental properties but have not set up an LLC or an S corporation yet, check out the link below where you can reach out to me and I will introduce you to an attorney in your area that has the experience and knowledge to set up the corporations correctly and offer you the most asset protection that you need. And if you're looking at starting to purchase some investment property, same thing. Reach out to me and I can help you get started. But before you do, remember it's really important that you have your money ready, because without it, it's like having a car without gas. And I'm Razzle Pants.
Damn it! Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter?
And you've been real estate informed.